Hey everyone, welcome to the Mobile User Acquisition Show. In the Mobile User Acquisition Show, we talk about how to use mobile user acquisition strategies to grow your app quickly and capital efficiently. The Mobile User Acquisition Show is presented by me, Shamant Rao, mobile growth leader and founder and CEO of the mobile growth consulting firm Rocketship HQ. Each episode includes strategies, tips, and pointers from the leading edge of mobile user acquisition that you can use to unlock tremendous growth for your app in a sustainable and capital efficient manner. Our guest today is Pau Quevedo. Pau is the lead Programmatic Trading at Goodgame Studios. I'm thrilled to have Pau on the show today because he's had tremendous success with programmatic, both on web and mobile platforms for many, many years. I couldn't think of anyone better to speak to about how the programmatic ecosystem is going to be impacted by the impending IDFA deprecation. I'm very excited to welcome Pau Quevedo to the Mobile User Acquisition Show. Pau, welcome to the show.
Hey, Shamant. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I hope we have a nice session.
Absolutely. Definitely thrilled to have you because when we've spoken prior to this recording, I've found a lot of your inputs very insightful. And of course, you do come very highly recommended. For those reasons, I'm thrilled to dive into how programmatic is evolving and how it could change come September, come the post-IDFA regime. All of this is something I'm excited to dive into with you today. Right? And a good place to start perhaps would be, what would you say are some of the key challenges that marketers face while doing user acquisition on programmatic today?
Mm-hmm. Well, programmatic means basically the automation of advertising. So inside the programmatic ecosystem, we use the DSP tools in order to buy traffic. And there's basically two types of DSPs, what we call managed and self. And right now, the biggest challenge that we see in the industry is to actually make self work as managed does. Managed and they were able to compete with the duopoly and all the other players around. But for self has been a challenge for some. Even some companies actually try to in-house fully the DSP activities, even building their own bidder. And eventually they realized that of the difficulty that it braced. So they moved into a retargeting solution for the programmatic. So programmatic has been working largely on the web space for retargeting and for branding. Performance was a bit harder. And in the mobile ecosystem, we work mostly with performance. So that's a bit harder as well. And inside that chunk of performance, the main driver of performance nowadays, in my opinion, is the device graph that the partners have, right? So for self DSPs that I was mentioning before, it's becoming, it has been historically really hard for them to create a device graph compared to the managed services. And that has been one of the main challenges, actually making self work.
Yeah. For clarity and understanding, can you define what a self-serve DSP is? How does it differ from a managed DSP? And why a self-serve DSP would not have a device graph?
Okay, the difference between to go one level above, the difference between an ad network, let's say, and a DSP would be the ad network is selling on a CPI and the DSP is selling on a CPM. Between the managed and the self, both would be selling on CPM. CPM is the one that dictates you're buying on a DSP on a programmatic environment. Out of those two, the main difference would be that in the managed, they actually are running the campaigns themselves, okay? You just upload the creative, send them a couple of emails, send you your payouts, and then adjust it. And they will run the whole show. And you would get some sort of learnings in terms of the transparency, where they've been serving, what's pub ID, and maybe which exchange. Whereas in the self, you will be doing everything on your own. And theoretically, the main difference is that the manage, what they do is that they create a device graph, which means that they understand the IDFAs, what each device is doing, and then they would know who is paying, of the different IDFAs. Whereas in the self, they're not doing that. And what they do is that they have machine learning tools that actually take data points made from your own campaign, and they model those data points in order to estimate conversion rates or CPAs, and then they bid accordingly to that. No? And that would be the main difference. The truth is that the self don't use a device graph because they don't profile the IDFAs like the managed do. And maybe because if you are actually going to be running your own campaigns, if you're using a device graph, what's the point of targeting? I don't care which app I'm targeting because it's all about the user. So it's hard for us to say, oh, I'm going to run in self a device graph because the device graph is actually doing the job. It's doing the whole targeting and everything. So it would be like, it wouldn't make sense, so to say. And then there's another solution, which is the bidder. And that solution, what it implies, that it's a self-platform. And the main difference with the self-platforms is that the self-platform, you will get an algorithm that has been trained by the different advertisers that are advertising on this DSP. Whereas if you go to the bidder, you would only be seeing the, so your algorithm will only be optimizing and getting knowledge based on the data of your campaign. And that is the main difference between them two.
Got it, got it. And when you say in-housing your programmatic, does that involve running on a self-serve platform or running with a bidder, or it could be either?
It could be either. The truth is that fully in-housing programmatic is the bidder, okay?
Yeah.
That's the real truth. But we are fine as long as we feel that the self platforms could kind of be like an in-housing solution. But the real truth is that the bidder is the one that gives you the full control. It would be a bit like, manage, you don't get control, but you don't get risks, all right? Because they are running the whole show. You move into self, you have a bit more control, but you have a bit more risk. And then the next step would be you get full control, but full risk. And it's way harder.
Gotcha.
Because normally in the bidders, they don't give you an algorithm. You have to basically tailor it made on your own because you have to customize it. And that it's only for big companies or if you actually have a need for it, okay?
Right, right. And now in starting September, the device graph is going to go away. So how does this ecosystem that you just described, how does it change between managed, self-serve, and bidders?
Yeah, very good question and tough one. I've actually tried all three formats, right? And in my journey trying to in-house programmatic, what I've basically done is I've been comparing those three elements. So I have an idea of what is the difference. The difference is basically that they manage with the device graph, they perform way better, and the other ones don't. That's a clear one. And how can I say it? The way that it's going to be now is that until now, we have these machine learning models in which they told us, oh, in the bidstream, you get a bid request with 150 keys, 200 keys of information, and then we model those. But we know that the most important piece of information was the IDFA, which was the deterministic information, right? We knew something about this IDFA. Where all the others, although they are deterministic because it's an iPhone, that I believe that the iPhone will pay is a probabilistic one. So there's like two environments, probabilistic and deterministic. Right now, some of us, the managed, are more into the deterministic, even the Facebook guys. The self are more into the probabilistic because we don't understand these IDFAs. So what the next step will be for the managed ones is that, first of all, they have very robust models. They have the IDFAs, they understand the other set of strings, that other set of keys that come along with that string. So for some time, they will be able to still perform because their models will take time to wear off. That's obvious. And they will do whatever they can by enriching them with fingerprinting information, enriching them with the 20% of people who would actually accept those prompts on the Apple. They will somehow manage to make those models live longer, right? But at some point they will die off. So what's going to happen then? So then they are going to have to go and model all the other keys that are within the IDFA. And in that moment is when we are all in the same level. So in that moment, we can all say, okay, now we have to model with our ML techniques, and then we'll see who is the better one, or who is able to have more advertisers, get more data, and model better. That would be a solution. But I believe that there will be some sort of cracking solution that we will not get there, because the truth is that modeling just those key elements that you get in the bid request, it's going to be really hard to compete against someone who actually knows the player for Facebook. So the gap is going to get way bigger, and let's see what happens. There was, I don't know, there's a lot of, in the industry, I've been doing web for some time. I've been following people like IDFA-based, and I work with Beeswax as well. Like in the industry, there's a bit of, some people are saying that the whole ML modeling still has to be proved that it works, okay? Because until now, we've been running mostly with the IDFA thing, cookie syncing. But let's see now what real happens when it's all pure ML, if it's actually gonna perform. I still have to see that, because I've been running such products like a Bidder, and it just was so bad in performance compared to the managed ones with the IDFAs. There's such a big gap that, I don't know, they still have to prove it, honestly.
Yeah. Would you say that the self-serve and the Bidder solutions were so bad that for the vast majority of advertisers, it wouldn't even work? Wouldn't even be ROI positive? Or do you feel like they're bad, but they could be some part of the mix going forward?
I believe those work for retargeting, but if we only focus on UA, I believe you can get some pockets. You can find some stuff. Like before, one of the pockets before was LAT users, because actually you can target those and use fingerprinting, okay? Lower CPM. Yeah. That's gonna be everyone now. That was one of the pockets. iPad, or maybe doing some sort of analysis of day parting, or playing around smartly with the waterfalls within the different publishers. There were some caveats that you can actually use, but they were not scalable. And I have, at least in Europe, I have good connections with some other gaming companies and other advertisers regarding programmatic, no? And the truth is that I find very, very, very small number of advertisers, I'm just gonna put it very small, that actually are running at scale UA in a self-platform. It's really hard to find them, unless there are those that have like very strong IPs. But for all the others that we are like pure DR marketing, DSP right now, in-housing, it's a real challenge.
Gotcha. And it's going to get much harder.
It's going to get much harder, but at least, I mean, like David says, it's not that you fail when you run self-DSP. The problem is what you compare it to, right?
Right.
We are comparing to Facebook. Right. We are not going to be there.
Right.
Before, if I go to my superior and say, look, this self-DSP brings us this ROI, this managed brings us this ROI, they will say, go to the managed. What is this? Okay.
Yeah.
But now, in let's say 6 months, when the models were out of the managed ones, I think self-DSPs are going to have a bit of like same situation as the managed, and maybe we have a shot.
Yeah. That definitely makes sense. And the gap is going to reduce. It's going to be a more level playing field as we go forward, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And so, and obviously what's going to become critical going forward is how you evaluate your partners, because the device graph or the past experience becomes much less relevant. So how do you recommend that marketers should evaluate potential programmatic partners going forward? What might be some of the questions they might ask in a post-IDFA world to form this evaluation?
Yeah, just to clarify, pre-IDFA world, with our main focus when we actually onboard a partner or we actually talk to them is to find out if they're doing the device graph somehow, if they're looking at user level data, okay? To what extent? How many keys of the log level data are they actually modeling? Are they only doing contextual? And that was one of the main questions, right? And right now that one is out, so that we understand that the importance of that one is a bit out. So now, normally people would ask stuff like, what is the, how do you call, like the analytics or like reporting or the campaign setup? I don't really care about any of that as long as it performs. The important thing would be if we are now shifting to an ML environment where they are going to be modeling as I mentioned, the bidstream data. You want to have, first of all, that they are listening to as much data as possible. That means the QPS, the queries per second that the DSP is connected to. How many bits are they listening per second? And you want them to have as much as possible. Secondly, you want them to have all the advertisers that are similar to you, so that they have algorithms that are trained in similar advertisers to yours, okay? And yeah, those would be like the main elements. But, and it all will depend on the algorithm. They can tell you whatever they want about how the algorithm is better than the others. At the end, you have to test it because it's really hard to know. You can ask them questions like, how often do you refresh it? What kind of regression model are you using? Can give you some insights, right? Or how many keys are you actually modeling? Or how do you go from the install to the payment? How do you move down the funnel? How does your algorithm take that into account? Because some of them go event by event. Some of them, what they do is that they aggregate the different events and they like they blend them, no? And you can ask those questions, but the most important one until now has been: is it user level data or not? And that will probably go away now.
Yeah. And when you speak of the other keys in the bid stream that they can model their performance off of, can you share any examples of what some of these parameters might be?
Absolutely. We normally, in this one, it will come all the kinds of information of the impression. It will come stuff like what device it is, what brand, what's the size of the screen, how many megabytes of RAM do they have, how much space do they have left on the phone. And depending on the vertical, you will be interested in different ones, right? Let's say if you're in the food industry, you might be more interested in, I don't know, like the location exactly, the GPS. No? For gaming, particularly, we're very interested in the device, time of the day, publisher. And yeah, we model around 6 or 7. That's what I've done until now. And I found it not that much. I would have hoped to model even more. No? And the more you can model, the better. But yeah, around those 5 or 6 is the ones that we've been doing.
Yeah. In some ways, this is going to become much like you operate with the SDK networks, right? Or would that be inaccurate to assume that?
That's really that's interesting because somebody was mentioning that the other day, right? It will be very similar to the SDK networks, but the SDK networks work on a historical weekly CPM. So historical how they do is that they calculate what they earned the last week, and they set up an expected CPM for this, and they're not real time, and they're not going for each user. So they actually don't really care the log level data in that regard. They don't use that. They might use some keys like phones, like carriers or device phone or like some things like that, but they don't model out that so much, and they are not users because they go into like, they just pack it.
Exactly.
So it's not exactly like that, but they got a point. They do have a point there.
Yeah. And I think the similarity definitely does stand out, right? And you do programmatic buying on the web and mobile both. Mm-hmm. So how does your experience buying programmatic media on the web inform how things might change with programmatic on mobile post-IDFA?
Well, in the programmatic web, this was announced earlier, and this was properly announced, right? They actually said, look, in March 21st, March 2021, third-party cookies will be out. You guys have to find a solution. They didn't eradicate it, like because what has happened here is a bit different, and the solutions there are mostly circling around the publisher. They want the publisher to actually enrich their first-party data, to structure their first-party data, and to that way they can send signals to us that we know that user is valuable, not because we know the user, but because the publisher says so, and I trust them. Okay. So in the web environment, they are coming up with 5 solutions. One will be go back to contextual. Okay. The other one will be first-party data, guys, build that up. The other one would be they're working on some sort of SSP, DSP collaboration bypass, and we can make it like to actually pass more data that we can actually match it. I heard there are similar approaches in the mobile vertical. I heard about that. Then they have the panels, which I'm not very familiar with. It's more for big companies. And then they have that Google recently announced that through ML, they're able to think when an iOS conversion has actually taken place. They can actually attribute that through ML. And because in the web environment, what is mostly worrying the advertisers is, apart from the retargeting, which is going to be complicated, it's the frequency capping. That's the biggest element. And they need that. They need the cookies in order to understand the frequency and to cap that. And that is for branding campaigns is extremely important. So Google actually said that they can actually, through ML, determine the frequency capping. So they have different solutions, but they don't have any that works really. The only one that actually ticks on all the boxes, like we'll be able to retarget, we'll be able to target first-party data, third-party data, etc., etc. It's the one that I mentioned, that the SSP and the DSP will somehow communicate.
Yeah.
And it's basically bypassing in our case on mobile, the MMP, right? Saying, look, we do it. And I've heard that MOPA might be working in a solution like that and other SSPs exchanges.
Yeah. And just to pick on one aspect of your answer, when you say first-party data, can you elaborate on that?
The first-party data, I mean that to go to an ad monetization, I'm also in charge of ad monetization at Goodgame Studios. So to take it to our world, that would mean that we actually, we would have to understand our users, and the same way that we actually kind of like cluster them between engagement and frequency. That's how we, in the ad monetization world, do it. We would do it even more. We would try to find out more about our own users. And then when we're going to show a rewarded video, then we can actually tell the guys, hey, look, this user, you don't know much about him, but we know much, but we know so much, and we just give it to you through a PMP deal or something. So we actually capitalize on our first-party data. Would be a way to take the power back to the publisher. Okay. I believe in believe in the industry that we are, that there is one fundamental thing in the industry, in the internet industry, and that is that content is being paid by advertisers. Okay, and I don't care what happened with the IDFA. That is something that is there. People are not willing to pay for content nowadays. They're willing to see ads instead of paying for that content. Yeah. So if we agree that that's like the gravity of the whole internet, okay, that will apply here still. So that means that if I want to make more money out of my content, I also have to work on who is watching that content. How do I cluster them? And this will also means that bigger companies will have a bigger shot at it. And we know from the web that all these news companies, now they're making a big umbrella. So they can have all the first-party data united into one, and now they can do their retargeting and they can do the selling in a much more efficient way. And that is eventually what will happen in the post-IDFA world, is that the big companies are going to be benefited out of this in comparison to the small ones.
When you say first-party data, that could be maybe CNN saying, this is 1 million of our most engaged users. We won't tell you who they are, but we will let you target them. Is that roughly how it would work?
Exactly. And we will put you on a different floor. We'll sell you a PMP deal, and we'll do a business,
but you won't see who they are. Okay, that makes sense. And they would probably have a different unique identifier like email IDs internally.
Exactly. They will, CNN will understand who their users are, who is more valuable to them. And then they would actually tell us, hey, you want the best ones? Look alike, $10 CPM paid.
Got it. And on mobile, something very similar could happen just with IDFV.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Yes, exactly. Or, yeah, I don't know exactly how it would be with the PMP deals, but I think we are moving towards that kind of industry. Because you can actually do that. I mean, we can actually talk to a publisher and tell them, hey, I want you to put me on top of your waterfall, and you can cut deals like that. And that would be the idea now.
Right. Interesting. And, you spoke about, look, content is paid for by advertisers, and that's the essential reality of how the ecosystem works. Now that the advertiser has less of a guarantee of performance without the IDFA, the performance is getting worse. How do you think that changes CPMs and conversions, or just the broad advertiser ecosystem in the short term and long term?
Okay. From moving from a deterministic to a probabilistic, what we're doing here is we're introducing noise into the decision making, right? The moment we have more noise, if we look at the CPIs is basically, it's a mixture of the CPI and the CVR. So if we look only at the CVR, I can expect that we don't know the conversion rates of the users so much. Okay, we don't understand those IDFAs so much. We only understand the publisher where it's being served. So I could imagine that CPIs go up because we have less information on the user. Okay, But on the other hand, I believe CPMs will go down because as we know less from the users, we'll not be able to bid so high on them because we don't know them. Right now, CPMs also go up. It's because, hey, I know this IDFA is good. I don't care if I'm bidding 80, 90, $100, but I'm bidding on it. Okay. But right now, if we don't have that, that will bring a down trend in the whole CPM industry. But I also believe CPIs will go up because of what I just said, because there's more noise into the auction regarding of the knowledge of the users. So those two elements I want to see. I believe in CPMs will go down and CPIs will go up. That means that the effect of the noise in the conversion rate that we don't know will be higher than the drop in the CPM.
Interesting. Yeah. And very many variables, very many things that will shape up over the next couple of months, as we will see. Wow, this was fascinating. I certainly learned a lot, and this is certainly something I'm going to think about as we get closer to September. And this is perhaps a good place for us to start to wrap up. As we wrap, can you tell us how people can find out more about you and everything you do?
Yeah, I work at Goodgame Studios. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Pau Quevedo. And yeah, I'm always open to a nice talk about UA and sharing. And I believe that one thing that we mentioned before is that you mentioned, how should we pick a partner in this post-IDFA? No? One of the things I forgot to mention is that I am actually looking for a partner that will actually help me navigate this madness. I'm looking for someone who's going to be prepared for this, who understands and who I can partner with. One of the big issues that I found with the DSPs was that they had a lot of focus on the ML, on the algorithm, but they didn't focus on the supply chain, okay? On understanding what's going on here, the supply path optimization, that kind of thing. And I believe that partnering with someone who understands the ecosystem the best will probably help you get better after this storm that is about to hit us. And that's one advice I would give is, don't just try to partner with someone, try to learn with them, try to make them learn with you. And that's probably my best advice into that.
Indeed. And we will, of course, put all of this out in the transcript and the show notes. For now, Pau, thank you so much for being on this show. Excited to put this out into the world very soon.
Okay. Thanks to you, Shaman. Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Mobile User Acquisition Show. If any of this was helpful or instructive, I would love for you to leave us a review or rating on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcast fix. This podcast takes a ton of time, effort, and love to produce, and I deeply value every review and every piece of feedback that you share. Thank you for listening, and I will look forward to sharing our next episode soon.